Hi everyone, so today we smash and grab things. Here is the logic session for yesterday's track, and as you can see it's pretty straightforward. Some drums, a topper line, a synth bus with piano, bells and everything, a bass track, a center guitar, and a distorted guitar bus. As usual, I'm using a top-down mixing approach, which means I'm processing the master bus before I'm processing all the individual tracks. So first is a compressor, which I use to tuck the snare drum back into the mix, and this lets me get away with a very pokey snare. I'll go over the settings pretty fast, so feel free to pause or clip the video. Next is a general EQ, which lets me add a bit of top end and low end, while also getting rid of the excessive sub information. I then use Klanghelm's Varimu compressor to add some color. As you'll be able to tell in a minute, it's not doing much in terms of compression, but it's adding a nice color and some top end, while also gluing the whole track together in a nice subtle way. And finally, I'm using IM Pusher by Waves for its exciter. So for this track I wanted very Deftonesy drums, so I'm using the GGD P4 library with the Pulse Masters Butch bass drum and the high reference brass snare drum, which are both tuned to match the key of the track. So let's hear the drums by themselves. Here is the MIDI lane for the drums. So as you can see, there are a lot of variations, both in terms of writing and also in terms of velocities, to add to the realism of the drum track. For the snare hits, I'm hovering around 100. That way I have a lot of headroom when I need accented flams, for example, in this part. On the individual channels, I'm using a combination of Waves G channel EQ and Get Good Drums Smash and Grab compressor, and that's basically what I use on all the channels for the drums. For the kick and snare drums, I needed them to be a bit more tamed on the first half of the song and clicker on the second half, and to do that I just automated the low pass filter. For the kick drum, I'm using this EQ to filter out some low end. I'm also adding a fair bit of click with a shelf. I'm getting rid of some clunkiness and boxiness. I'm also adding a touch of sub information. And I'm using this expander from the channel strip to control the sustain from the drums. I then use Smash and Grab in grab mode to add some punch to the kick, and I'm also blending back some of the drag signal in to preserve the low-end bloom after the attack. Same thing with the snare drum, I'm controlling the sustain using the expander, filtering out some excessive low-end, adding some crack with a shelf and a bell around 3K, getting rid of some boxiness and adding some body with a shelf. I then feed that into Smash and Grab in grab mode to add a lot of punch to the snare drum. For the overheads, I'm filtering out a lot of low end, while also controlling the mids and the harsh frequencies around 3.5 kHz. I'm using Smash and Grab in smash mode this time to squash the whole track together and blend that with the dry signal to have a more consistent overhead channel. I'm almost using this channel as a secondary room channel. I'm then using Soothe 2 by Sound to control the harsh peaks. For both the rack and floor tones, I'm using a similar process, which is to filter out the excessive low-end and high-end information. I'm adding a lot of crack, around 3K, and I'm getting rid of the boxy mids. I'm then using Smash and Grab in smash mode to squash the initial attack from the toms and to add some sustain. For the room tracks, I'm filtering out a lot of low-end and mid information. I'm using Soothe 2 to control the harsh frequencies, especially on cymbal hits. and I'm using smash and grab in smash mode to squash the dynamics from this track. I then fed different amounts of all the individual tracks into a parallel compressor, which is smash and grab in smash mode in the extreme setting, and this channel gives me a very crushed drum sound, which is great to add some sustain and body to the drums and gluing the whole drum track together. I then grouped all the tracks together into a drum bus, in which I'm using the NLS channel in the mic mode, which adds a bit of low-end and high-end information. I'm using smash and grab in pro mode, in grab mode, to control the attack, release and ratio settings, and I'm aiming for about 2 to 3 dB of gain reduction. And this compressor makes the whole drum mix more forward and in your face. And finally, I'm using the classic clipper by IK Multimedia to control the picks. I have this topper line that appears on the second half of the track. So very simple claps and hats. I'm getting rid of a lot of low-end information and adding a fair bit of high-end. I'm using this Woof compressor by Goodhertz to spread the signal to the sides. And I'm using this Renaissance compressor by Waves, which is very simple and effective. Moving on to synth, so we have 4 tracks. First is a bell track. So I'm doing some EQ, high-end exciter, and I'm using OTT to filter out the low end and to squash the track. Next is a high piano. So first I'm using this chorus by Tar to spread it to the sides. I'm then filtering out some of the excessive mid information and adding some exciter. And I'm using this Abbey Road mastering chain to spread the signal to the sides and to filter out the low end in the middle signal. And I'm using OTT in the same way as with the previous track. Next is a pad. I'm using this same chorus to spread the signal to the sides. And the Abbey Road mastering chain again to control the stereo image. Next is the piano, which sounded a bit dull, so I added a fair bit of high end. And some ambiance using this Valhalla room. And I'm using smash and grab in smash mode to squash the dynamics from this track and blending that with the dry signal to get a more consistent track. Next is the bass guitar. So first is a multi-band compressor, which I use to control the low end so that there are no low end jump when switching strings. Next is an EQ, which I use to filter out a lot of low mids and to control the high end. I then have a gate, which I use mainly for the staccato parts. Next is a Renaissance compressor, which is very effective on bass. And finally, I'm using Saturn 2 to add some grind to the top end. And the mix for the Saturn 2 is automated, so that I have a cleaner signal on some parts and a grindier sound for the final part. And finally, I'm using track spacer to duck the bass whenever the kick drum hits. Next we have this simple guitar, which I compressed pretty hard using this API 2500. I then use this chorus to add that 80s vibe. And finally some EQ. And next we have the distorted guitar bus. As you can see, the individual channels are pretty raw, and most of the processing happens on the bus. So first I'm using this NLS channel to add some grit and to add some top end and low end information. Next we have this multi-band compressor, which ducks the low end whenever there's the low end bloom in the signal. And I also control the high mid using that. Then we have an EQ. And I'm using the Abbey Road mastering chain to filter out the signal and to spread the guitars more to the sides. I'm then using this Kramer master tape simulation to add some grit and some depth to the guitars. And finally, I'm using this track spacer plugin to duck the middle signal whenever the bass plays. And with that, we have covered almost everything interesting in this track, with the exception of these two buzz synth tracks, which are basically sine waves mixed with various amounts of pink noise and run through a bunch of distortion. And then crushed using OTT. I blended these two buzzy synth tracks with the final guitars to add some grind to the final part of the track. And there you have it. Thanks for watching, and feel free to ask any question you might have in the comment section. And please check out Smash and Grab by Get Good Drums. I think they did a very good job with this compressor. It has honestly really sped up my workflow, which is a very good thing. Bye!